Welcome, Rose. It's lovely to see you. Rose was one of our early members, so despite being much younger than all the rest of us, so it's really nice to have her back. In fact, Rob and I first met Rose at Croyd. I think it was on a Devon Wildlife Trust outing when I was incredibly impressed by her, and that remains so, despite as throughout all the occasions when Rob and I saw Rose fulfilling various tasks around Croyd as the ranger for Park Dean, Ruda. But on that occasion, the DWT occasion, we also met for the first time Robin and Judith, which was something that was going to be very influential in Coastwire's current life, I think. Anyhow, my introduction has been stolen from one online because I thought it was so super. You probably know it, Rose the Ranger. And Appledore Primary School described Rose. I say Rose is the Deputy Ranger at Northam Burrows. She's an environmental biologist who is passionate about our planet and the responsibility each of us has to protect and conserve our natural habitats. That much we all agree with and we know about, but they also go on to say, which I find absolutely fascinating, Rose the Ranger is also an explorer, writer, blogger, wild play expert, I wonder what that means, conservationist, natural playground designer, guided walk leader, tractor driver, dedicated beach cleaner working with Surfers Against Sewage and others, and a generally awesome lady. Well, I agree. I think that's what we all began to perceive as soon as we first met her, and it's been true.
That's quite an introduction. Thank you.
Well, thank the Appledore. You know, they've got a strange name, the Apple Tree Initiative of Appledore School, but it's just sums you up.
They're a lovely group.
Okay, well, it's obviously mutual. So over to you, Rose. Live up to that. Anybody could.
Oh dear, there's some of that slightly historic. I moved to North Devon about 8 years ago now to take the job as ranger at Croyd. But prior to that, I was a National Trust ranger in Bedfordshire, and was very involved in the setting up of the 50 things to do before you're 11 3/4.
Perhaps we should ask you to share your screen now. Now we've got a clear run of it. Can you do that?
I can. So yeah, sort of I was saying about previously being a National Trust ranger and doing a lot to do with natural play and playgrounds in woodlands, but the last 8 years I've been here on the lovely North Devon coast, which is just playful all by itself. Just the sheer fun of the landscape here. So starting with this gorgeous image from an unusual view of Northam Burrows, courtesy of the North Devon Biosphere, the lovely drone image. If I, there we go. So we've got grey sands up at the top of Northam Burrows. Did everyone enjoy their walk for bird watching the week before last? I'm afraid I wasn't able to join you. I went off on holiday that day, but otherwise I would have very much enjoyed coming out for a walk with everybody. So a little bit about Northam Burrows Country Park to begin with. There we are. So for anyone that's not so familiar with the landscape here, we've got 253 hectares of parkland. We are open to the public all year round, even during the first lockdown. We closed the gates to vehicles as the police asked us to, but as a common land, we're always open for people to walk across. We're within both the A&B and the biosphere, sort of right in the heart of that area. And as it's common land, people have the right to walk anywhere across the entirety of Northam Burrows. We've just got two small areas fenced off, the sand dunes beside the visitor centre. We've got permission to fence those off for a number of years to exclude people and livestock, to protect the wildflowers in there. And up at the northeast section of the site, we've got the old landfill site. So that's managed by Devon County Council and fenced off for the protection of the public. It is quite safe in there. You know, we go in there for work reasons, and there's nothing nothing worrying in there, but there's the slight chance of methane gas escaping from the old landfill site. So we wouldn't want the public to have access to go up there and have a barbecue. So yeah, Northam Burrows was designated SSSI in 1988 for its special features. Hopefully you saw a number of the overwintering birds for those of you that went on the walk a couple of weeks ago. It seems surprising that sharp brush is a particular protected plant, that it's a special feature, because it's just so amazingly abundant here. But nationally it's quite a scarce plant. So it is quite unusual to have such a vast area of sharp brush. And then we've also got the sand dunes, the water germander, which I'll come back to, and the pebble ridge. And the pebble ridge is a feature that really makes Northam Burrows as it is. It's quite a low-lying coastal grassland made from the silts washed down the river. And if it weren't for the pebble ridge, then it would erode at a far faster rate and change at a far faster rate. I was saying about the pebble ridge being a particular feature, which obviously currently goes, sort of the pebbles from the base of the cliffs all the way from Heartland to Westward Ho, and then stretch into the pebble ridge around the front edge of the Northam Burrows and curving right the way around, and we still find pebbles all the way around into the Skern. However, it's a very mobile feature. So if I just go to this next slide, we've got here the 1897 map of Northam Burrows. This is taken from the National Library of Scotland's website, which is quite good for being able to access all the very old Ordnance Survey maps. Quite well organised on there. But I've got a quote here for you from Townsend Hall, who was a Victorian geologist. So in 1865, he spoke about the Northam Burrows, saying, on the northeastern side, the Northam Burrows have no pebble breakwater to protect them, but a range of sandhills once formed a very effectual, although it has proved temporary, defence. And indeed, the earliest maps and earliest records, written records, show the Pebble Ridge as being as far as Sandymere Lake, which is a lake on the left-hand side of that image, just by the base of where it says Pebble Ridge. So it's quite a changing feature. So on that historic map, obviously the whole area was very vastly different back then, only a couple of 100 years ago, but so the map was 1897. It's not showing on there the golf club, which was founded in 1864, and that's the same year as the new seaside resort of Westward Ho had its first foundations laid. Before that, there was 3 farms where Westward Ho is now, so quite a different landscape. But the Burrows itself has changed relatively little over the years. The golf course obviously has a fair visual impact, and this whole northern section up around the Skern, you can see that that's quite a different shape. If I just hop back,
Yes.
you can see the whole of the landscape is filled in, for where the on this map it shows the road out to the lifeboat station, which is no longer there. The foundations are long since eroded away, and the remains would be a little distance offshore. But that road to the lifeboat station was there, sort of there in the 1890s. And so when during World War II, this area was used as a radar station, and for military activities on the beach and around the Skern, they wanted to improve that road and continue it. So where you've got the Appledore Bridge, at the beginning of that road, they began dumping rubble and household waste. to raise the road up and make better access to the top end of the Burrows. And that continued for many decades. Well after World War II, they continued dumping rubble and household waste. So that entire Skern Road, sometimes called the Tip Road, is built on rubbish. So if I flip back to the previous picture again, you can see where the road continued and pushed right the way across that original inlet of sort of the where the tide would originally have pushed, and the salt marsh would have been a great deal bigger. That whole top section of the Burrows would have been tidal, and is now high and dry, and in fact looks like a large area of dunes that is in fact landfill underneath. So it was an understandable decision, during World War II to dump rubble there to improve access to the Burrows. And following World War II, it continued to both be a suitable site for getting rid of rubbish, and also to increase the area available for grazing, as sort of production of farmland was very important to increase production of food. So it would have seemed to be a sensible thing to continue making the Burrows drier to increase the amount of sheep that could graze here. I'm not sure I can quite understand that they continued using the landfill up until the 90s, before it was eventually capped in 94, I think. But we do now have a drier northern end of the Burrows, rather than the extensive salt marsh that would have been there 100 years ago, and an ongoing management issue, in that anyone that knows much about geology can see that this is a very changeable landform, that with storms and with rising sea levels, that it pushes the Burrows around, eroding that tip up where the landfill is. So we've got a ongoing area to focus on up there, in terms of sort of large scale moving boulders around and making sure that that landfill site doesn't wash away. But that's fortunately above my pay grade. It's senior torage management, and various other organisations are looking at that. And in the meantime, we're looking at the wildlife on the surface, rather than currently worrying what's underneath. But just a quick illustration for you about the speed at which the pebble ridge moves. Northam Burrows is shrinking. The whole of Bideford Bay is really one sand dune system. So Northam Burrows and Braunton Burrows are part of the same sediment system. So although we're losing sand dunes on our side, Braunton Burrows has more capacity to shift and grow on that side. But yes, my next slide. So if you look closely at the lines across the original map, we've got the slipway down to Westwood Hoe here. So the Golf Links Road and Westbourne Terrace going down to to where the current slipway is. And you can see the furthest outline of that is the 1861 position of the Pebble Ridge, and where the road was that was washed away in 1866. And also interestingly, the Union Club, which was built as one of the earliest buildings in Westwood Hoe. I said the seaside resort began in 1864, and there we've got the Union Club, built in 1875, demolished in 1879, and was put back up on Atlantic Way. It's now known as Atlantic Flatlets, and sadly got quite badly damaged in a fire last year, and then a section of it fell down last week in the storms.
Oh,
so that original building that was built in 1875 and then moved inland in 1879, I think it looks unlikely that it will be recovered and rebuilt. It looks likely that'll be flattened. But yeah, the speed with which the Pebble Ridge moved certainly caught out the Victorian entrepreneurs who were rapidly building their seaside resort in this beautiful location. You can see how the Pebble Ridge has shifted back over the years. So on that, I don't know if anyone recalls, has lived here long enough to know the slide and recreation ground that used to be beside the Pebble Ridge Hotel. That slide, that location is now the mini golf and go-kart track. So just beside the car park at the top of the slipway in Westwood Ho. So the line there hasn't changed too much since the 1870s, as we've now, as the bottom picture shows, we've Toysia holding the line there to maintain access and maintain flood defences to that corner of Westwood Ho. So our most recent work there, we've got the top picture of the bulldozers repairing a breach in 1962. I believe that photo is of Sandymere Lake. So the top right corner of that photo would be where the visitor centre is now. I'm assuming that from the shape of the sand dunes in the background on that one. And yeah, the bottom photo of 2019, I think, repairing storm damage. Since that photo was taken, December 2020, we added boulders. So from a china clay pit near St Austell, usefully the granite boulders there are spoil, they're surplus to requirements for the china clay pits. So around 2,000 tonnes of boulders were brought from the quarries around St Austell in December 2020, each boulder weighing around 6 tonnes. So they were brought on many lorries because each lorry could carry 3 boulders, and added into to where that fence line was. And we hope that'll hold the line for a few years, while again people above my pay grade discuss extensions of the seawall and longer term flood management for that top corner of the Burrows. However, that's around the outskirts of Northam Burrows again. So heading into the centre to our lovely visitor centre. The original Burrows Centre opened in 1984. I'm afraid I don't have identification of any of the people in this photo. If anyone does recognise their own children or friends and family, then do let me know. But so in 1984 we opened here as an office for the Rangers, a hub for events and guided walks, and the public exhibition opened in the summer months. Since the 80s we've been running around 20 to 30 school group visits a year, so in a good year we have around 1,000 children visiting us to learn about the rock pools and the sand dunes, various other habitats. Depending on the age of the children, we'll try and get them a good mile or two walk around, exploring different habitats and seeing different species. I've actually already had 8 school groups this year. So since COVID, I think everyone's getting a bit bolder about coming out in bad weather, not just waiting for the summer, but taking advantage anytime the sun shines. So that image is the original 1980s visitor centre. Concrete block walls clad in timber, no roof insulation through most of the building, heating from storage to heaters. So there certainly was time for a change. So funding's been found in recent years, mostly from the Coastal Communities Fund, and designs were drawn up for a wavy roofed 2-storey building, cafe on the first floor, balcony all round, lots of glass. Work was due to start in late March, early April of 2020. And it didn't. We were in the first COVID lockdown at that point. By the time we came out of the lockdown, building materials were rapidly very, very scarce. And when we looked into the Coastal Communities Fund, they said, yes, there is still funding available but it still needs to be spent by the funding deadline. So we suddenly had rather a lot less time, less resources, and less availability of building materials. So there was a rapid rethink and a rapid restructure of what could be done with the resources available. And I think what has been done is really excellent. We have retained the original concrete block walls. So January the 1st last year, we handed the site over to Pierce. Mike and I have spent a couple of months emptying the visitor centre of its contents, putting them into storage, filling skips with some of the assorted things that rangers had accumulated over the previous nearly 4 decades that we'd been in here. I found some odd things. We found, the original 1980s walkie-talkies, which were about 4 times the weight of our current ones. We found collections of bugs in alcohol, which had sadly degraded to be sort of murky messes in test tubes. Huge amounts of bones, feathers, shells, all sorts of things that were tidied, sorted and removed to storage. And what you're looking at here is, in fact, from pretty much where I'm sitting now, but looking the other way. So if I just turn my screen, so that's the view now of the end wall of our shop, and through the door into the education room. But on this image here, we're looking at where the walls have been smashed down of what was the staff toilet, cupboard and office. And it's a lovely light and bright image because above those rafters there is no roof. So we retained the original concrete block walls and the foundations, and everything else was removed. So we've got entirely new electrics, heating, and the main thing that was worked on was adding about, I can't get my hands far enough on the screen, about that much insulation around the entire building. So external cladding insulation, an enormous amount of insulation on the roof, and pretty new cladding on the outside. So you can see from these 2 images. So February 2021, not long after we'd handed the building over, and February 2022, how it's looking now, with basically as efficient a building as we can get in terms of keeping heat, which allows us to keep it open for more of the year, and much more comfortable for everybody. So there's the changes to the current building. So yeah, in terms of considering a slightly reduced, slightly tighter budget for this build, we do not currently have any green energy. So it was decided that rather than spending money on ground source heat pump or a turbine or solar panels, to just plough all of that money into insulation. Reason being, we can add solar panels, and we will almost certainly add solar panels, but it'd be very difficult to add more insulation after the build. So the interior has been entirely remodelled. The public toilet's taken out of this building. The Rangers office moved to make space to add an education room and a changing places facility. Mike and I spent a lot of time last year working with designers, and we spent almost £100,000 on the exhibition area, which is behind me. Can show you around later if you like, which includes a circular aquarium, and making a suitable space for our lovely visitor centre assistants to help people find out about the site and about the local area. So here we are with the inside of the visitor centre. Some familiar faces there, I hope. So top left here, we've got our changing places facility, which is a super duper disabled toilet basically, but also with a adult size changing table and various other facilities. Next photo down is our education room, fantastically getting good use. We've got art workshops, we've got talks. I'm using it with school groups quite frequently, and homeschool families. Assorted other photos of the interior of our visitor centre and our wonderful visitor centre assistants, as that's the main point of having a visitor centre, is a suitable place for people to come and talk to a real life person and learn about the site and everything they need to know. And bottom right there, we've got the additional building. So our new exhibition is open for a longer season, now Easter to the end of October. And next door, we've got the new cafe and toilets open pretty much every day except Christmas and except when the winds are blowing at ridiculous miles an hour and no one can stand up on the Burrows. So another nice aerial view for you of our, so the building towards the back is the original visitor centre, and the lovely sand dunes behind. And in the foreground, we've got the new Pebble Ridge kitchen and toilet block. This arrived on the back of 5 lorries and was craned into place. So you can see right at the front, you've got the toilet block, and then a gap, and then the 4 sections that were bolted together to create the cafe. So quite a useful way of making a building. It's very, very efficient. And right at the front of this picture, you've got the brown area, which is the new sand dune. So that's the sand that was excavated for the foundations of the new building and concrete area, which in that image you can see it's covered in sort of Hessian loose weave matting, which is just to keep the sand down, basically stop the new dune from blowing away. The original grass from that location, that was the first job that the builders did on the 1st of January last year, was to get out there with a turf cutter, remove all the turf, roll it up, and St John's Garden Centre took it away, rolled it back out again in a field, kept it alive for 6 months and then brought it back again. So we've got our original turf. So just around the back of the visitor centre is where all the best turf was put, and that's all completely regrown, perfect for people to walk on. And then the sort of more falling apart scraps of turf went onto the new sand dune, which surrounds the toilets and cafe. The bottom right photo you've got there is from in the autumn. The lovely team from Bumblebee Conservation Trust came out to work with our volunteers for a day. We were plug planting suitable plants, so stuff that would naturally be found on the SSSI, were planted into the new sand dune. I don't think I've mentioned already, so the entirety of Northam Burrows is SSSI, except for the specific bit that the visitor centre sits on. So this little fenced area, and where the new sand dune is between that and the road, that area is not SSSI, but of course we manage it in such a way that we're not going to plant random things on there that would then let their seeds escape to be inappropriate on the SSSI. The whole facility's been designed to be accessible, so everything, that's why we've got quite so much concrete. Everything is flat and level, or gently sloped and level, I should say, and the cafe raised slightly so you can have a sea view over the dunes in Pebble Ridge. So for those people who aren't physically able to get to the beach, then they can have a tour of our exhibition and have a nice cuppa with a sea view. From our new cafe just helpfully dropped into place. So I've used more than half my time talking about some of these aspects of the Burrows. I shall move on to some of what we do out on the Burrows. So I've got a nice photo montage here of some of the things that the rangers get up to. Mike and I work here all year round. In the summer months, we also have 2 seasonal rangers. So the first of those will be starting with us in April, and another one starting soon after that. And of course, that's when our visitor centre assistants and toll booth team start as well. Will be in time for the Easter holidays. Right now, it's just myself and Mike, and large teams of volunteers. We were out yesterday with a dozen volunteers. Actually, on a neighbouring site, we went over to Kenwith Valley in Bideford, which doesn't have its own ranger, and we were doing some scrub clearance there to sort out some willow scrub that's starting to invade into a reed bed. But yeah, throughout the year we carry out the practical work, or sometimes arrange contractors to do practical work for the grounds maintenance and the habitat management of the 253 hectares of parkland we've got here. So groundwork like installing new bridges. We've got a dozen new bridges over the last year or so, which as the site is getting busier, we want, although Northam Burrows is common land, anyone can walk anywhere on the common land. There's areas we would prefer people didn't walk, for example, the sections of the burrows which are very good for ground nesting birds. So in the spring, we would really rather people didn't walk where the skylarks are nesting, but we can't fence them out and stop them from doing it. So we're just making it very easy for people to walk in the places we do want them to walk. So we've got a dozen new bridges, like the one in the top right. We've got 20 new way markers, like the one in the bottom left there. There's also five lovely new map boards, which we will install when the ground dries out at Westwood Hoe. At the moment, it is far too boggy to be digging big holes and concreting in nice big map boards. So that will be a job for in the spring. We'll get all that lovely signage in place. So this coming summer, all of our visitors will be able to find their way around easily and learn a bit about the site, and hopefully stick to the obvious paths and not wander off into the more sensitive habitats. So bottom left there, we've got some of our regular volunteers. That's Sean and a few of the students from Petrock. We've been doing big volunteer groups twice a month the last few months, which is really, really helpful in helping Mike and I to achieve some of the habitat management, because there is more work than we could realistically do alone. During the summer months, we do surveys of the flora and fauna to make sure that our winter work is having the desired effect. So winter tasks are more along the lines of repairing fences, clearing scrub, removing bramble from the sand dunes, sort of cutting and removing some of the grass to reduce the nutrients and allow certain wildflowers to thrive. And in the summer, we then do surveys and make sure that we're getting our management correct. And then we can adjust if something doesn't seem quite right. So yeah, we work with all kinds of people. Bottom middle picture there, we've got Dave from the AONB leading one of the history walks. We do like getting other people to lead our guided walks. It makes it more varied and interesting for our visitors. But we do free activities throughout the year. Every Tuesday and Thursday of every school holiday, apart from the Christmas holidays, we do free activities. So Tuesday just gone, we were mud dipping on the Skern, introducing families to that habitat and showing them what the wintering birds are actually eating and why it's such an important place for those birds in the winter months, that they have plenty to feed on and don't get disturbed. So hopefully getting that message out there about not letting dogs go roaming down onto the Skern, but we'll see how we get on progressing with that. So yeah, work with the AONB, the Biosphere, the various plastic-free groups, and plastic-free Torridge and plastic-free North Devon. I think the top right image there is Marine Conservation Society came to do a massive marine litter survey with a school group. I think that was West Buckland School that day. We had dynamic dunescapes out. I think you guys have had a talk from Dynamic Dunescapes last year. They joined us for quite a few of our events last summer. Bumblebee Conservation Trust also join a couple of our summer events and help with our autumn volunteer groups, and also local libraries and art projects. So as I said, it's only me and Mike here, so we're always looking for people to collaborate with and help people to understand the local nature and see what's out here and understand it better and hopefully look after it better. So personally, I largely organise and deliver the education programme and the event programme. So yeah, I've had 8 education groups so far this year, mostly home educating families, but also a couple of special needs schools and a couple of primary schools. So our first proper public event, as I said, was mud dipping on the Skern. We had 72 people join us on Tuesday. And the next one will be a winter wildlife walk this afternoon. So if anyone can make it to the Burrows for 2 o'clock this afternoon, I'll be leading a winter wildlife walk. I will probably be wearing full waterproofs, as even if it's not raining when we set off, it may rain and the wind is quite cold today. But nonetheless, we shall go exploring and see what people want to learn about the wildlife that's here in the winter. How am I doing for time? There we go. So a little bit about what wildlife and species we do have here. Northam Burrows is a very open landscape, so it's affected very strongly by wind, by salt. I read a fact that the coastal grassland, certainly on this sections closest to the sea, receives 100 weight. That's 8 stone of salt on the wind per acre per year. So that's I don't know if any of the ladies joining are 8 stone. Any of the more slender ladies in the group might be about that weight. But that amount of salt per acre per year, just blown on the breeze. And then we also have any large tides, big spring tides, will wash up the Pill and flood large sections of the Burrows. So yeah, and if a spring tide coincides with a storm, then we've not just got Sandymere Lake beside the visitor centre, there's also Grey Sands Lake up by Grey Sands car park up by the Skern. And if you follow the Pill, the stream all the way from Appledore, from the Appledore entrance all the way up towards Westward Hoe, then that opens up out into Goosey Pool, and that large area also floods on the big spring tides. So yeah, large areas of the Burrows can be inundated by salt water. They can be flooded by fresh water in heavy rains. Of course, they dry out pretty much completely in summer. So the lake areas don't support a great deal of life. So Goosey Pool, Sandymere, Grey Sands. We've also got the inland sea and a large, we call it the scrape and scrub. So a large area that's been where the topsoil has been removed through management work over the last 7 or 8 years. So that scrape has been designed to flood in the winter as a sort of sand dune slack. So very, very challenging environment. So there's some areas where it's quite a limited range of species of plant that can survive that. And in terms of the sand dune habitats, Northam Burrows is lacking 4 dunes. So if you could picture Croyd Burrows or Braunton Burrows, you've got the large expanse of beach and exposed sand. So even at high tide, you would have sand exposed. So on windy days, that sand ripples up and builds into the 4 dunes. Here at Northam Burrows, we have Pebble Ridge, basically across where those 4 dunes ought to be. So our dunes are starved of sand on windy days. Any areas of the beach that do dry out enough to start drifting are unlikely to drift up over the pebble ridge by very much, and then they just get washed away again on the next tide. So the dune flora that we do have rarities such as sea stock. So the top middle pictures there, we've got sea stock, and in the dune slats we have water germander, a very rare plant in the UK. We've got some here. Northam Burrows has somewhat more, and a site in Cambridgeshire has an enormous amount, several thousand stems of it, but that is it for the UK. So we manage the area where the water germander grows. We manage that specifically to try and benefit that plant, although it is not particularly thriving here. Behind the dunes, the coastal grasslands include chamomile lawns, which are an increasingly rare habitat now that there's not so many village greens, and sort of traditionally it would have been the edges of cricket fields and so on. Might have been chamomile lawns, but it's not a species that you see in great abundance in too many places. And in areas that flood with the salt water, silverweed really thrives in those areas. We have enormous areas covered by silverweed. The oyster catchers, which is they spend a lot of time here, mostly in the winter. So earlier when I was talking about the beginnings of Westward Ho, being sort of 1864, the foundation stones laid for this new coastal seaside resort of Westward Ho. I forgot to mention its name, which of course it's the only place name in the UK with an exclamation mark. It was named after the book Westward Ho by Kingsley. Charles Kingsley spent quite a bit of time here, loved this landscape, and detailed it quite a bit in his book Westward Ho. And he spoke quite a bit about the oyster catchers. He called them sea pies. And when he was hearing about the plans to build a seaside resort here, he was very upset that the tourists would scare away and upset the sea pies, and people would leave their picnic litter and their chicken bones and so on, leave them strewn across the pebble ridge of this lovely natural landscape. So oyster catchers do spend quite a lot of time here in the winter, as do a variety of birds, which I'm sure you saw feeding on the Skern when you visited. Brent geese, golden plover, curlews, redshank, shelduck, lapwing, all sorts of birds come and feed on the Skern in the winter. I think our classic summer bird is the skylark. Of course, the skylarks are living here all year round, but they're only starting to sing now, and the males will sing very enthusiastically through the coming months. Northam Burrows is a very good site for seeing skylarks, which are doing quite badly nationally as they nest on the ground, and areas of farmland which would traditionally be cut as hay meadows, which would be an excellent nesting site for them. Those hay meadows are now usually cut as silage cuts, which is a much more efficient way of producing feed for livestock, but of course it's cut far earlier in the season and cut repeatedly, so that means there's then no space for the skylarks to be nesting there. Mammals often seen on Northam Burrows are quite tricky to spot, but we do have rabbits here, obviously with the name Burrows. Stoats, weasels, harvest mice. Certainly got plenty of moles here. Bats, it's not a great site for bats because bats quite like following hedges with their hunting by echolocating. It's good for them to have something for the echolocations to bounce off. So quite often bats follow hedge lines, and we don't have any good linear landscapes like that on the Burrows. But we do have pipistrelles, noctules and barbastrels hunting here. Foxes and badgers visit to hunt. And very occasionally, and around this time of year, seal pups, as they very young seal pups, the white coats, will be born in sheltered coves, and the mothers will look after them and feed them, and they put on weight at a ferocious rate because seal milk is very, very rich. But once they're weaned, they are on their own to learn how to hunt and to explore their local area. Hopefully most of them head off round Lundy, nice and safe, plenty of hunting, but occasionally the seal pups do come exploring along the coast and haul out on Northam Burrows, haul out on the Pebble Ridge, particularly if it's kind of high tide, early morning before the dog walkers are out. And then of course the tide drops back, exposes sand, all the dog walkers come out and the seals go, oh my goodness, this is a terrible place to be. I've spent a little bit of time over the last couple of years standing out at the very tip of Northam Burrows, asking dog walkers to walk a different route as a seal pup kind of splashes round and follows the tide down and finds its way back away. I'm sure many of you know, but if you ever do find a seal pup in distress, then British divers, Marine Life Rescue are the ones to get in touch with to help out with making sure they stay safe. But yes, it is an occasional sight, but not a very sensible place for seal pups to visit. How am I doing? I think we're getting towards cup of tea time. So do I have any other species on there we'd like to talk about? I've sort of done a general ramble and spoken a fair amount about what's here and how we look after it. I think I'll pretty much hand over to you guys for questions for if anyone's got anything they'd like me to elaborate further on.
I'd like to ask something before we get into that about the seal pups, because I had no idea that there were seal pups found there. I don't know if other people were more familiar with it, but I mean, what do you record the seal pups? Do you record any of this wildlife that you're seeing formally with any organisation?
It's only happened twice since I've been here that we've had a seal pup haul out, and in both instances, yeah, we phoned British divers, Marine Life Rescue, so reported to them that they were here and asked for extra help if there were local volunteers, and both times we had local volunteers come down to kind of generally patrol and ask dog walkers to kind of keep their dog under control and walk a particular way until the seal was able to take itself off and back out to sea.
No.
And we record all the dead marine strandings. We record those and send the data to the Devon records.
That's what I would. I'm sure your birders are so keen on recording their birds that you won't have to get involved with that. That's probably all dealt with by them direct, isn't it? But that's useful to know. I got involved in a botanical survey of the Burrows about the first year I was here, and we'd just done the survey of Horsey, botanical survey of Horsey, and then the chap who's now the recorder for the Devonshire Association led it, and he was really impressed with what you had. Tiny plants. So I mean, he saw things I had no idea were even there, then could identify them. And I think the list got attached to a report on the state of the Burrows that was produced later. But anyhow, that's enough about that.
Yeah, if anyone would like the species list for the Burrows, I think it's on our website, but you've got to dig for it a bit, so I can email it if anyone wants.
Oh, well, knowing it's on your website, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I think it's in the appendices of the last management report, which is on our website.
Well, I've got quite a lot of questions. I expect other people have got some too, but you're quite right. Let's have a break, because that was really comprehensive. So much, covering such a wide range of the history and the place, the centre, which I've never seen before, the new centre, and that's really exciting. And I want to know more about that circular aquarium, and how you look after what's in it. So we'll and then to go out onto the Burrows, it does whet one's appetite for getting there. But it's just great, and the amount of interaction you have with people, with children, with young people, bringing them in—that's all fantastic stuff, Rose. And Well done. It makes us all feel, in Coastline feel a bit better that we don't have to do it.
Well,
thank you.
I've not yet put the dates on my calendar for summer events, but if anyone would like to join to help wrangle numbers of people, because as I said, we had 72 for mud dipping.
Oh,
last summer I think we had 150 turn up for a rock pool ramble, and at that point you're just kind of giving people the basic information on how not to harm things and send them and go, just wave at me when you find something interesting. It's difficult to have good interaction with people when the events get that big.
you see, you're meeting an otherwise unmet need, aren't you? And that's making us feel really guilty now.
Rose, I'd be very interested to know what you found in the mud.
Yes.
You know, from the bird point of view.
Can we have that as your first question after the tea break?
So
Okie doke. So yeah, brief tea break, and then I'll
into that.
share what we found in the mud.
Thank you very much. That's lovely.